I'm going to tie a Marabou Muddler, and I'm starting off with a size 6 streamer hook in the vise. And the thread that I'm going to use is a 140 olive, and I'm going to get it started about the 2/3 point in the hook shank, and I'll wrap it down to the point, and then I'll just trim off the excess. And I start it there because this 2/3 mark is going to be important as a point of reference when I start to measure out some of my materials. So I know I want to start to build the head of this pattern from here on up, so that will act as my stopping point for everything else I tie in underneath it. So the first item is going to be a tail section, and for that I'm going to use a red marabou. And so I've taken off a plume, and all I'll do is I'll measure it up against the hook shank, and I want it to be about a hook shank in length, but I also want to take advantage of the butt sections of this so that when I tie them in, it helps really create a uniform thickness to my pattern. So I've tied it back to about the barb and the hook, and now I'm just going to wrap my thread up the marabou right on top until I hit that 2/3 mark, and now I'll come back through and trim it off. And now I can just wrap this back in, and what you'll find is that now I've got a nice uniform body to this pattern. So I'll just bind down any kind of loose fibers, and now I can tie in my rib. And for that I'm going to use an ultra wire, and this is going to be a brassy size, and I'm going to use a red, and I'm going to take off maybe a 3-inch section, 4-inch section or so, and I'll just tie this into the side as well. And now I can tie in my body material, and you've got choices here. Sometimes I use a braided material like this rainbow braid, but I also like to use just a regular tinsel. So this is a holographic gold tinsel. The drawback to it is that it's in a medium size. It's relatively narrow, so it just takes longer to wrap the body, but I really like the effect of the holographic and the smoothness of it all. So I'm going to tie this in starting at the tail, and then I'm just going to secure it throughout, and I'll leave my thread then at that 2/3 mark. So now I'll just wrap the body, just side by side, covering up your threads. And I'll bring this to that mark, and then I'll tie it down and remove the excess. Now I can wrap my wire through, and so just taking, again, nice even turns, all the way through, and when I get to that stopping point again, I'll tie it in. And then just helicopter this off. And now I can tie in my wing, and for that I'm going to go back to marabou, and in this case I'm going to use a white marabou, but again you've got a lot of different color options when you tie this in. So I'm going to take a good clump of marabou, and I'll measure it to the back, and I'll want that marabou to go and end at the same spot as the tail. So I'm just going to switch hands, and I can make my cut And now I can tie it in right on top. And the next piece, I'm going to add a little bit of flash into this. So I'll bring a crystal flash, and this is a bluish crystal flash, and I'll take a piece out, and all that I'm going to do is bend it, so double it over, tie it into the side, and I'm going to bring it to the length of that marabou. I'll do the same thing on the other side. So I'll double it over, tie it in, and then trim it off. And then I'll just advance my thread up to behind that tied in section. Now I can build out my head. For that I'm going to use deer hair, and this is a short, fine deer hair. The first clump that I'm going to take is going to be as much as my stacker can handle, because I want to create good volume. And also I'm going to stack the tips so that it gives me a good collar to this pattern. So just put it in my stacker, give it a couple of taps, clean up any sections that might be longer, and then I'm just going to give myself a nice even starting point with this for when I tie it in. And that also helps so that the butt sections don't interfere with the tips. So I'm going to set this right on top. I'm going to take 2 soft turns and then pull straight down. Let it spin. And then I'll wrap it up towards the front. And now I can compress this while I take my rest of my turns. At this stage, on that first piece, I'm going to take my curved scissors and I'm just going to trim a little line that will serve as kind of a visual indication of where my tips start. So that way when I'm trimming this later, I'll know when I'm getting close, and it just helps keep as many of those tip sections in as possible. I can trim up the front of this as well. Alright, so now I'm just going to clean that up. I'll compress this again. I'm going to put a little bit of a thread dam in front of that section. Now it looks like there's room for one more clump, so I'll take off another section, trim it. For this, since I'm not going to be using the tips, I'm going to remove them, and I don't need to stack them. So I'll just take that, I'll hold it at an angle, take 2 soft turns, and the second one pull straight down, let it spin, compress it, and now I can whip finish this. And I'll pull that tight and then trim it. And now I can come back through and start to shape my head. So again, I'll go back to my curved scissors, and all that I want to do here is just start to make some rough cuts, just rotating my vise, holding my scissors at the same spot, And then once I've gone back through once, I can advance my scissor position and continue to make my cuts. Now you can see where that section is that we trimmed up earlier, and I'll just follow that ridge the whole way around. You can also hold them back now once you've kind of identified them, and clear the eye. And just shaping this head. Again, this is one technique I tend to play with probably more than I should. Just trying to get it right. Curved scissors works great here to help shape. You can also use a razor blade, and these you can pick up at Walgreens or any place like that, and this just helps with some of the more detailed work. It's a little bit more precise than the scissors. So if you're going to be doing a lot of this, I'd recommend picking up some of these razor blades. And I'm going to quit while on the head here. I'm just going to clean out the eye a little bit more. Alright, you get the idea. So this is a great little pattern. I like this because this is one of those streamers that you can tie pretty small as well. If you want a little bit more petite pattern, a little bit more petite streamer, this one works well. So that is a Marabou Muddler.